If you live in the New World, there's a decent chance that you qualify for one of the best passports in the world merely through your family tree. Today, I'm going to give you all the details, including some new updates on citizenship by descent. A lot of people who want to get a second passport start by looking at investment-based options or golden visas, and yet they often overlook the fact that they may qualify for citizenship for practically free merely by proving that they had a parent or a grandparent or a great-grandparent, or in some cases even further back in their family tree that can qualify them for one of the world's best passports. If it's your first time here, my name is Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consultancy for 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors who want to obtain dual citizenship, reduce their taxes, and protect their assets overseas. We also host the biggest and best offshore conference where we teach this stuff. It's called Nomad Capitalist Live. And citizenship by descent, for me, is a great way to get a powerful passport. You can potentially get citizenship by descent in many different parts of the world. We've seen people get it in Africa. We've seen people get it in the Caribbean, in Latin America, even occasionally in Asia. But considering how many people in the United States identify as having European ancestry, and when you go even further, how many people in Canada, how many people all up and down Latin America have European ancestry, if you're living in the New World, there's a decent chance that you might qualify for one of these citizenships by descent. And the cool thing is that while you might go to the Caribbean and donate your way to citizenship in, let's say, Dominica or St. Kitts and Nevis, that's going to cost you $100,000 on up just for a single applicant. If you are fortunate enough to have European ancestry, you can qualify for a superior passport in a European Union or EEA country without the donation. It may take you a while to prove your ancestry. It might require hiring a genealogist or a company like Nomad Capitalist to help you, put in that on-the-ground effort. But your actual legal costs, your actual out-of-pocket costs are going to be substantially lower. And, a citizenship in a country like Italy or Portugal or Ireland or Slovakia is generally considered a higher quality citizenship than one in the Caribbean, for example. And the reason for that is because if you're a citizen of a European Union or European Economic Area country, EU and EEA, you have the ability to live, work, study, travel all throughout that general region. So someone who becomes an Italian citizen by descent can decide, I'm going to go live in Ireland. I'm going to go live in Portugal and take advantage of their tax advantages. I'm going to go and live anywhere I want, and I have a document that allows me to travel to the United States, to Canada, to Australia, to New Zealand, pretty much anywhere in the world that I want, meaning if I don't want to keep my current passport, I can give that up without losing any kind of travel privileges. I'm going to extend my ability of number of places where I can live in the world, and I'm just going to have a really solid backup plan. So let's go through the details, because we're seeing a couple of programs, recently Slovakia, opening up and allowing people to go further back in their family tree. There are 18 countries. So between the European Union, the EEA, which includes countries like Norway and Switzerland, and we'll throw in the UK for good measure, 18 different countries that will grant you citizenship by descent based on varying levels of how many generations back your ancestors were. Now, I do talk to Americans or Canadians or Australians who say, somebody, moved here in 1602. Sorry, that's a little bit too far back. But if you have 3 generations back or earlier, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, Italy, and Luxembourg will let you in. Now, the country in most cases needed to exist back at that point, right? So, again, if you have someone from so far back, from some country that no longer exists, that may not work. Slovakia, as I mentioned, now allows you to go back exactly 3 generations. If you have ancestors from any of those countries and you can prove that, then you may be able to obtain citizenship in one of those countries. Now, I know as someone who has Lithuanian ancestry, for example, there are certain conditions that come with that. You need to prove if they left before a certain time, why they left. So there are some contingencies. Poland has at times asked people to learn Polish language. Hungary has done the same. Italy, takes a long time. So there are certain caveats for this, right? I mean, if you're someone who wants to renounce your citizenship 6 months from now and you have Italian citizenship by descent, listen, go out and get some kind of citizenship by investment in 6 months, expatriate, and then, keep the process for Italy going to where you'll now have, a superior passport as your new second passport, 3 or 4 years from now. But those countries allow you to go 3 generations back or earlier. And again, Slovakia has recently opened up. Also, Bulgaria and Greece allow you to go back as much as 3 generations. We've had a number of folks who are Bulgarian, who are Greek. We helped someone recently become Romanian next door. We helped people become Hungarian, every once in a while Polish. Italy, we've helped a number of folks become Italian. All those, you can go 3 generations back. You can go 2 generations back in Romania, in the Czech Republic, in Slovenia, in Croatia. Helped people get 2 of those passports in the last year, Slovenia and Croatia, in Spain, and in Portugal. You can also do so in Ireland. Now, Ireland, you can theoretically go back up to 3 generations if some special measures were taken. For most folks, it's going to be 2 generations. And so you can see at this point, we've covered a good amount of Europe where you can go back and look at your grandparents or look at your great-grandparents. Now, all these countries have different provisions. What you want to often check is, who was the original citizen? Where were they born? What was the conditions in that country at that time? Why did they leave? Again, can sometimes be an issue. When did they leave? Did the country exist? All that. What you'll often have, as in the case in Italy, is was there an unbroken chain? So let's say your great-grandfather moved from Italy to Canada. Did they become a Canadian citizen before the next generation was born? Because dual citizenship was less of a thing back in the day. And so if somebody lost their citizenship, that means they lost the ability to pass it on. But the theory in general, and again, some countries did this differently, was, hey, if your great-grandfather was a citizen and then your grandfather was born, hey, technically, that citizenship would have passed along in the same way that, if I give birth to a child, my children are going to be able to have the citizenships that I have, right? Now, again, some of the citizenships that I have may have restrictions on dual citizenship, and so the child has to choose when they're 18, but most of these countries don't really have that. You can generally hold dual citizenship. And so the idea is, hey, it never really went away. You still are considered a citizen. Nobody just knew it, right? I mean, somebody moved from Italy to Canada or from Ireland to the United States. They kind of forgot about that maybe, and it just was like, hey, now we're Americans. But yet still, you were Irish, and you can go back and claim that. If somebody gave up the citizenship along the way, that may, in many cases, cause a problem, although not always. You can also go back through your parents, of course. So that would be France, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, most of the Nordic countries, Iceland, Cyprus, and generally the UK, although occasionally we've seen cases where you can go back through double descent in the UK and you can go back further. The UK has a number of different rules. They're somewhat strict. Germany is somewhat strict. Most countries in Europe, quite frankly, by the way, we've helped people get Serbian citizenship by descent. That's not part of the European Union. We've helped someone get North Macedonian citizenship by descent, Albanian citizenship by descent. So the non-EU countries offer this as well. Ukraine offers it. It's rather difficult generally. But you can see that most countries in Europe allow you to go back through your family tree. And so if you can become a citizen of any of these European countries, even a non-EU country like Serbia has an excellent passport. You should claim that, because what are the costs? The costs are going to be finding someone to get the record. So if it's your parent, if your father is French, your mother is French, generally doesn't matter. That should be pretty easy. You go ahead and get a birth certificate, you go and get their records, you get their passport, that's not a difficult process. Grandparent, obviously there's more records that need to be gathered. What we saw, for example, with the case that we did in Romania is we had to send someone out to this little village to go and get records. In my process in Lithuania, it was not only searching on the US side, we had to go to Gary, Indiana to find some records from my grandfather's side. And it took us a while because we'd call different places, and in Lithuania wanted, we want to see that he's ethnically Lithuanian on the documents. But he was born in the United States. It took us a long time to find that right piece of paper. Then we had to go to Lithuania and find some of the records, and it still didn't quite work out in the end. And so we spent years looking for that. Most people that we help doesn't take that long. But you are going to need to track down the records. You're going to need to track down the documents you need to prove that you are ethnically whatever the nationality is. And so obviously great-grandparents become even harder. You need to kind of demonstrate the entire chain. You need to get the documents. And so can you do that? Potentially. If you can get stuff in your country, that potentially is doable. If you need to go back to the other country, again, we've literally sent people out to villages or to the National Archive to kind of pull documents out. We've hired attorneys to do that for folks. We've done it ourselves. So the process, number one, of confirming that you qualify is probably the most difficult process, right? And that's generally where someone's going to charge you for the help, because you've got to make sure you can prove the case, right? Even though I am ethnically Lithuanian, I've got to get all these documents and say, hey, listen, here it is. And even then, sometimes they're not satisfied. And then you can go and file. Generally, the part once you file is not that difficult, although sometimes they will say, hey, can you learn the language? I've heard one case where someone didn't get it because they didn't pass the language test to the satisfaction of someone at the embassy. That's generally not an issue. But once you gather all the documents and put the case together, then filing it is not really that difficult. And so there may be kind of a de minimis filing fee on the government side. It may take you, in the case of Italy, if you're not going to go to Italy and actually do it yourself, and speed up the process, it might take you 3 or 4 years doing it through the embassies in your country. You've seen Ireland, which was generally relatively efficient, say, hey, we're just not processing stuff right now due to the pandemic. And so things, it's not necessarily going to be super fast. You may have to spend a year, 2 years, 3 years gathering documents and waiting to get your passport in hand. But, I helped a friend of mine become an Italian citizen. And then guess what? All of his kids became Italian citizens. And then guess what? His father, who had the ancestor, became an Italian citizen. And so now all of them can move, his father with his spouse, he with his spouse, my friend, and then all of his kids will all have the ability to move there with their entire families, the kids with their families in the future, not only live in Italy if they want, not only can they take advantage of Italy's tax exemptions because they haven't lived in Italy before, so they could go and get very favorable lump sum or other tax treatment, but they could also decide, hey, we're English speakers, let's go live in Ireland, right? And so they can take advantage of tax incentives there. And so you have a lot of optionality, all for a relatively low price, if you want to go through the process of proving the genealogy and then filing it and then waiting it out. So for a lot less than you would spend going through citizenship by investment programs, going through golden visa programs, you have Italy, Ireland, Poland. These are top tier passports. These can go pretty much anywhere in the world. And so it's something that we've helped people with at Nomad Capitalist. You can certainly contact us at nomadcapitalist.com if you think that you qualify. Hundreds of millions of folks in the new world do qualify for some of these programs. They're out there for the taking. I think that most of them would be agnostic to where if you can qualify for one, why wouldn't you take it? Have it as an option. Have it as a backup plan, or have it as your plan A. But check your family tree and see what you qualify. Feel free to contact us for help.